Today I'm going to speak to you about the Office of the Advocate for Business and how it can help you. The office was created out of legislation to be basically a one-stop for businesses to reach out to the board if they have issues that they need resolutions for, basically for small business. So what do? Well, the office gets calls on a daily basis from business owners that have problems. We assist individual businesses with questions they have about coverage and compliance. I go out on the road prior to COVID, personally across the state, and discuss with business association, employer groups, chambers of commerce, what business owners need to know. What is workers' compensation insurance? Who needs it? Who doesn't need it? How do you get it? What does it cost? What happens if you didn't have it and you were supposed to have it? And how my office can actually help businesses on a daily basis. I also report directly to the chairman of the board, and that's really good because when I used to go out on the road, and hopefully we'll be going out again, a lot of times I'll hear from business owners, and they can actually point out things that maybe we can do better here at the board. So I bring that issue up to the chairman of the board and see if we can make some systemic changes to make things better for business owners in New York State. Next slide, please. So what is workers' compensation insurance? In New York State, if you're a business owner and you have employees, you need to have workers' compensation insurance. It covers on-the-job accidents, injuries, and illnesses that happen at work. It provides medical treatment, medical care, and a partial wage replacement to that injured worker during the period that he cannot or she cannot work. It protects the employer also because 99 out of 100 times in situations where there's an injury at work and workers' compensation insurance is there to protect the injured worker, there is no lawsuit. The employer does not have to hire an attorney because the injured worker is being taken care of. Next slide, please. Disability benefits insurance, not to be confused with Social Security disability, but New York State disability insurance is also mandated if you have workers working in New York State 30 days in a calendar year. And what that does is it covers off-the-job accidents, injuries, and illnesses. However, it only provides limited wage replacement. There are no medical benefits. Employees can receive a wage replacement up to $170 a week for a maximum of 26 weeks. All right? Don't confuse it with Social Security disability benefits. Next slide, please. All right, then, who needs coverage and who doesn't need coverage? As I said earlier, businesses in New York State with employees need coverage. Next slide. So who's an employee? Basically, anybody providing a service to a for-profit business can be determined to be an employee of that business if there's a case that's brought to an administrative law judge, a workers' comp case. Anybody providing any service to a for-profit business may be determined to be an employee of that business. Any compensated individual providing services to a not-for-profit can also be determined to be an employee of that not-for-profit, with very limited exceptions in a 501c3 IRS designated not-for-profit, and that would be clergy or teachers. And they would need to be doing that type of work, clergy work or teaching. If you had a teacher that you were paying to plow the parking lot in the winter, they would need to be covered. If they were teaching, they do not need to be covered. Next slide, please. So who doesn't need workers' comp insurance? A sole proprietor with no employees. It's me working for me, and there's nobody else. Partners in partnership with no other employees. If everybody that's involved is a legal partner and there's no other employees, you don't need it. And that's the same for an LLC. If it's only the people that are members of the LLC that are being compensated, coverage is not required. And then there's the one or two person owned corporation with no employees, husband and wife. As long as each of you owns at least one share of stock, and between the two of you, own all the shares, 50-50, 99-1, and you each have to be hold an office in the corporation. And there can be no other employees. If there's a third shareholder, coverage is required. All right, even if the third shareholder is a silent partner, coverage is required. 2 shareholders or 1 shareholder, coverage is not required. Next slide, please. So we were talking about the insurance. So how do you get it? What is it? So workers' comp insurance, the premium, the cost of the insurance is determined mostly by a classification code, which determines how hazardous is what I do. All of the different types of work that is done are given a classification code. For example, clerical work, construction work, airline pilot, all right? There's a class code that's applied, and it's applied to each $100 of payroll. So for example, if you hired clerical workers to work for you, it might be 30, it's not very dangerous, right? 30 cents per $100 of payroll. However, if you were installing chimneys in buildings, that's fairly hazardous. That could be $25 or $100 per $100 of payroll. So you take a class code, you take the payroll, and then how large is the payroll? And then also, as important, is how safely you operate your business. If the New York average, the state average is 5 accidents a year and you have 25, guess what? You're going to be paying a lot more money. However, if you are safer or the same as the average, you'll pay the same or less. And then every insurance carrier has their own administrative costs that they carry. So it's always good to shop it around. There are approximately 250 insurance carriers that sell New York State workers' compensation insurance and disability insurance in New York. And then there's also the New York State Insurance Fund. And the New York State Insurance Fund is what we call the insurer of last resort. And that's not a negative. They're a very competitive insurance carrier, very well run insurance carrier with a great website. And we call them the insurer of last resort because they have to write your policy. You could contact a private carrier and tell them what you do, and they may not feel it's profitable for them and they don't have to write it. They won't write it. They'll say no. The New York State Insurance Fund must write you unless you owe them money. If you owe them money, you have to pay it, and then they will write you. All right? So it's always good to know. I would start with the New York State Insurance Fund and again, shop it around and see where you can get your best deal. Next slide, please. So some specific coverage issues. We went over the sole proprietor partnerships, family members. Family members need coverage. All right, I can't tell you how many 2-person corps, mom and pop, have a business, they don't have employees, they hire they pay their child so that they can put their child on their health insurance. Now they need coverage. All right, so if you have a family member, you need coverage, unless you fit into the partnership or the LLC category, or the family member is a corporate member with you. Domestic employees, if you hire someone to work in your home and they work less than 40 hours a week, you don't need coverage. If they work more than 40 hours a week, they do need coverage. If they live with you and work less than 40 hours a week, they do need coverage. And even if they go on vacation with you, you need coverage. Independent contractors and subcontractors, that's where it gets very tricky. Everybody wants to be an independent contractor when you get into these deals. It happens all the time where the employer wants you to be an independent contractor because it costs less for him to carry your carrying charges. And the employee wants to be an independent contractor because they get a bigger paycheck. And that's all well and good until somebody gets injured and they go to the hospital. And the first thing they're asked is, did this happen at work? And they go, yeah, well, who do you work for? I work for that guy. And now it becomes a claim. I remember, and I've said it often, there was a case of a restaurant owner who used to run lobster night, one night a week. He hired somebody to come in on Wednesday night to cook lobsters. had a contract, called him an independent contractor, paid him on a 1099, and everything was great until there was an accident, and the fellow cooking the lobsters went to the hospital. They asked him, did it happen at work? He said yes, so this claim was filed. And when it went before the law judge, he said to the restaurant owner, why don't you think you're responsible? He said, because he's an independent contractor. So the judge says, well, what do you do? And he goes, I own this restaurant. And what did this injured worker do? He's a cook. There's nothing independent about that. Nothing independent. If somebody came in to fix his air conditioning unit and got injured, that's an independent contractor. So obviously he ruled that this person was an employee. So please, don't call something that it isn't for your own sake, all right? Make sure somebody is truly an independent contractor. Next slide, please. A good way to determine who's an independent contractor is to go on a board's website, wcb.ny.gov, click on the employer section and go to the independent contractor page, and you will see the factors that are considered when our law judges are determining whether somebody is an independent contractor. The first thing is direction and control. Are you telling somebody what to do and when to do it? Are you giving them the equipment to do it? Do they have their own federal employer identification number? And do they truly maintain a separate business establishment from you? And there are 10 or 12 other criteria that we will go through. So go to the page, call our office if you're unsure, and we can guide you to making the right decision. Next slide, please. If you're in the construction industry, there's something called the Construction Industry Fair Play Act, where workers are presumed to be an employee unless they can prove they have their own business. This is overseen by the Department of Labor, New York State Department of Labor. I would suggest go to their website, look up the Construction Industry Fair Play Act to see that you're complying properly. There's also a Transportation Industry Fair Play Act, also overseen by the Department of Labor. So if you're in the transportation industry, I urge you to also go on their website and search the Transportation Industry Fair Play Act to make sure that you are acting accordingly. Next slide, please. General contractors are liable for the workers' comp claim of any uninsured subcontractor. So, next slide. What that means is if you hire somebody to work for you, you should get a certificate of their workers' compensation insurance that you can provide to your insurance carrier when you are audited. At the end of a year, you're going to get audited. When you got your policy, when you got your workers' comp policy, you told the carrier what you expected to do, the type of work you do, how many employees you're going to have. And at the end of the year, they're going to audit you and see if what you said was correct. If what you said was correct, fine. Perhaps you thought you were going to do more than you did, and they charged you too much. You'll get some money back. And perhaps you didn't think you were going to do as much as you did. You got a little bit more. You may have to pay a little more. If the carrier sees that you had somebody working for you, a subcontractor that you paid, and there was no insurance, they're going to absolutely charge you because they would be responsible to cover that person. So if you are using subs, get their certificate of insurance, you present that to your carrier upon audit, and you cannot be charged for that. Next slide. And what I suggest you do, go back one. Yes, okay, yeah, this one. What I suggest you do is have your business added as a certificate holder on their policy so that should the policy cancel, you'll be notified. Just like auto insurance, you can get a workers' comp policy by putting a down payment and paying it monthly. If there's an unscrupulous contractor that's working for you, they can get the policy by putting a down payment, give you the certificate of insurance, and then never make another payment. The payment, the policy will cancel. And if you're not a certificate holder and you don't know, you won't find out for a year, at which point you will definitely have a large increase on your policy. If you were a certificate holder, you'd be notified, and you could call that subcontractor and pull them off the job until they had the proper coverage. Next slide, please. If you're supposed to have workers' comp insurance and you don't have it, there are penalties, up to $2,000 for every 10 days you didn't have it, or $72,000 a year. If you had up to 5 employees, that's a misdemeanor. And if you have more than 5 employees, it's a Class E felony. Misclassification is the same as being uninsured, and it's an egregious penalty. What's misclassification? Remember I told you when you get your policy, which is based on, on the class code of what it is you're doing. If you, again, are unscrupulous, you call the carrier and you tell them that everybody working for you is doing clerical work. So you get a very inexpensive workers' comp policy, when in fact, you're building those chimneys I was talking about. That's misclassification. It's the same as being uninsured. And it's one of the few areas where my office won't help somebody, because that's a premeditated crime. All right. You're knowingly defrauding the system. The penalties for that is very, very severe. Next slide, please. There's also a law in New York State called the Debarment law. And the workers' comp debarment law, if you have any penalty with us whatsoever, you are barred from getting a contract in the state of New York or any municipality in the state of New York for a year. And there is no way out of that. So I urge you to never have a penalty with us. And one of the ways that I see employers getting penalties often is at that audit time, when they get that audit at the end of the year from their insurance carrier and they disagree with the audit. They get into a fight with the carrier. They end up lapsing their policy and many times win the battle with the carrier, but lose the war. Because if their type of business is requiring them to get a permit, license, or contract in New York State, they cannot do that for a year. So what I tell businesses is if you have a dispute with your carrier, pay it. If you're correct, you'll get reimbursed. If you're wrong, you should have paid it. And if you lapse, you will be on the debarment list. And if you do business with the state of New York or any municipality, you won't be doing business for a year. And there's no way out of it. Remember that. Next slide, please. Again, if you had that penalty, if somebody made an error, things happen where people make mistakes. We realize everybody is not trying to defraud the system. So there's an appeal process. If you're penalized, don't stick your head in the sand. It's not going to go away. Contact my office or contact the board and say you want to appeal it. And what we'll ask you is, do you have the proper coverage now? Our goal is to make sure you have coverage to cover workers if should they get injured, and also a level business playing field so all employers are paying the same freight. So if you have the coverage, we will reduce the penalty based on your premium and the period of lapse that you had. So typically, I'll give you an example. If somebody hired a nanny and we didn't catch them for a year, and they got a letter saying they owed us $72,000, they owed us $72,000. Call my office. We'll ask them, do you have the coverage now? They say yes. I'll tell them, send me the declaration page of your premium so I see what your premium is. They'll send it, and I'll see that the premium for a nanny is $400 a year. Say $400 a year. Instead of $72,000, because it took us a year, they would be in judgment status. There would be 4 times premium. They would owe us $1,600, not $72,000. All right. So the reductions in penalties are huge if you do the right thing. And the quicker you do it, the better it is, the more of a fraction of the penalty it will be. So I urge you, if you know anybody that has a penalty or if you have a penalty, contact our office and we will help you. It won't go away. Next slide, please. To control your premium, make sure you have that right class code. You can check with the New York Compensation Insurance Rating Board. and tell them what you do and see if you have the correct code. Maybe you have a friend who's in the same business as you, and their comp insurance is cheaper. And you ask them what's their class code, and they say a different one than you have. Perhaps your carrier is making an error. You can contact the New York Compensation Insurance Rating Board and tell them what you do. They'll tell you the proper class code. They'll tell your carrier the proper class code to apply. If you have claims, stay informed with your carrier. The sooner that claim is resolved, the better it is for everybody. And most importantly, operate your business safely. Next slide, please. One of the ways that I've learned to operate safely is by having a labor management safety committee, all right? Get an equal number of members of labor and management. You have a chair of the committee, rotate that, and have regular meetings. Next slide, please. What you do with that labor management committee is walk the workplace. Most accidents occur when shortcuts are taken. Management doesn't know about shortcuts. The labor knows about, the people that do the work every day, they know the shortcuts. So this way you can eliminate shortcuts, eliminate accidents, review the equipment, make sure that the proper procedures are being applied, and train for safety. It's simple if you do it every day. Next slide, please. Actually, if you contact, there's also something called the Code Rule 60, which is the Workplace Safety Prevention Incentive Program, where if a business sets up a safety program or return to work program, drug and alcohol prevention program, you can save up to 10% of your premium, your annual premium the first year, and 6% every thereafter. That's also overseen by the Department of Labor. And if you visit their website, which is listed here, you can see if that's something that you think could apply to your business. Next slide. The Department of Labor will also come on your site, walk your workplace with you, and help you mitigate safety risks, and there's no cost for it. And they're not there to look at your place to see if you're doing anything wrong. They're there strictly, the people that come are there strictly to do a safety inspection that will help you. So I urge you to contact the Labor Department if you think it would also assist your business. Next slide, please. So your responsibilities are to get the insurance, display the poster that you're going to get from your carrier. Should you have a claim, report it immediately, and know that Section 120 of the Workers' Comp Law states that an employee cannot be discriminated against for filing a claim. You can't take punitive action against an employee because they filed a workers' comp claim. You can terminate somebody if you need to replace them, or you can terminate somebody for a valid business reason. We urge you, if you have to replace somebody, perhaps you can try and get that person to get back, maybe in a return to work situation. If they can't do the type of work they were doing, perhaps they could do something else. You always want to try and keep your employees. You've trained them. They've worked for you for a long time. You don't want to lose them. And lastly, employees are eligible regardless of their citizenship and or their immigration status. Next slide, please. Switching gears now, we'll talk about New York State paid family leave. 2018, Governor Cuomo signed it into law, and it provides job-protected paid time off to either bond with a child, care for a sick family member, or assist a family member that's in this armed services that's being deployed overseas. You don't take this for yourself. You take this to either bond with a child, care for a sick family member, or again, assist somebody who's in the armed forces that's being deployed overseas. Next slide, please. All private employers are required to provide paid family leave coverage. As the employer, you need to get the coverage. You get it through your disability benefits insurance, and you can deduct the cost of the paid family leave directly from your employees. Employees pay the cost of the insurance unless you want to pick it up. Next slide. If you're a sole proprietor or self-employed, you can voluntarily opt in for coverage within the first 26 weeks of starting your business without any waiting period. If you're coming in after 26 weeks of starting the business, there's a 2-year waiting period. Next slide. Again, the paid family leave coverage is fully paid for by employee payroll contributions. The New York State Department of Financial Services sets the employee contribution rate to match the cost of the coverage. And I suggest you go to newyorkpaidfamilyleave.ny.gov. And on that website, you will have everything you need to learn about paid family leave. You know, how much it costs, how much you get, everything you need to know. Next slide, please. The key employee responsibilities on paid family leave is to make sure you get the coverage, pay your premium, okay? Provide information about paid family leave to your employees. And should an employee file a claim for paid family leave, you'll have to fill out some paperwork on the wage information to the carrier. Again, visit paidfamilyleave.ny.gov for a full array of information on paid family leave. Next slide. Some COVID-19 info. Next. If there's an illness at your workplace, if a worker notifies you that they've tested positive for COVID-19, you must report it to your insurance carrier that will file a claim. It's not up to you to determine whether they got it or not. If they tell you they did, file the claim. Next slide. There is something called COVID-19 quarantine leave, which provides workers with job protection and financial compensation when they or their minor dependent child is subject to a mandatory or a precautionary order of quarantine or isolation. Most employers are going to get financial compensation by using a combination of the benefits, which may include the new employer-provided paid sick leave, depending upon the size of the employer, paid family leave, and disability benefits. Next slide. Your role in implementing the COVID-19 quarantine leave, whether you're self-insured or providing these benefits, is basically the same as a regular paid family leave. There are some new forms. Visit paidfamilyleave.ny /COVID-19 for the full details. Next slide, please. The COVID-19 quarantine leave, and I think you can get a copy of this, but employers with 10 or fewer employees and a net income less than $1 million will provide job protection, and eligible employees may use paid family leave and disability benefits for the period of quarantine. Next slide. Employers with 11 to 99 employees and employers with 10 or fewer employees and a net income greater than $1 million will provide at least 5 days of paid sick leave, provide job protection, and the eligible employees may use paid family leave and disability benefits for the period of quarantine. Next slide. Employers with 100 or more employees, as well as all public employers, will provide at least 14 days of paid sick leave and guaranteed job protection for the period of quarantine. Unlike workers' compensation insurance, where should you need to replace the employee, you can terminate that employee. You cannot with paid family leave. Next slide. There are some premium-related reductions that are available if COVID-19 is affecting your business. For example, if your payroll has diminished greatly because of COVID-19, contact your carrier and let them know. Also, if you've purchased PPE, personal protective equipment, for your employees, you can get a rebate of, I think, up to $500 for that. Contact your carrier. And there's also a new class code, telecommuter reassigned employees, which can be applied if your employees who used to do one type of work are now doing clerical work. If that's the case, contact the carrier and they can put you in this class code, which I'm sure is less than the class code they are currently in. Next slide, please. For more information on paid family leave, there's the helpline and the website. Next slide. And here at the board, we're very, very proud to let everybody know that we've got a new claim system called Onboard. And basically, it's an electronic claim system now that's going to increase the speed that everything occurs. All of the players in the system, whether it's the claimant, the provider, the doctor, the attorney, Everybody is going to have access to the claims, which means basically things are going to happen faster. Employees are going to get, injured workers are going to get treated more quickly and get back to work more quickly, which benefits everybody. So we're really excited about that, and it's only going to get better as time goes on. Next slide, please. On social media, if you choose to follow us, here's the way to do it. And next slide. To contact my office directly, that 518-486-3331 is my desk, and that is my direct email. We're here for you. We're staffed all the time. And if there's anything we can do to assist any business in the state, please give us a call. We'll be happy to help.